Hi guys, welcome back. I appreciate you clicking on today's carecollab video about the Phalaenopsis Schilleriana. There are several of us participating in this specific collab, and I will put the channel names and links in the description below, as well as list them on the screen at some point during the video. I've had my Schilleriana since July of 2021, and before we get into that, let me just kind of go over what a carecollab is for those of you who are new. A carecollab is where several of us who do social media and post about orchids get together on a specific day, and we all post on that day and cover kind of what we do for our specific orchid or genre of orchid in our specific environments. Many of us do grow in similar conditions. However, as with anything, there's always differences. And once you are done watching this video, go check everyone else out and find out what they're doing and maybe find some tips and tricks to help your Schilleriana. So I've had my Schilleriana since July of 2021. I did purchase it from Orchids by the Lake, which is a store that Yoshi from Plants and Other Things has. When I received her, she was on a mount, and when I unmounted her, it ended up being 2 Schilleriana, much to my surprise and delight. Initially, the plan was to send the second Schilleriana to Bobby from Cloud Forest Vibes and more. However, that particular plant did not make it. And mine, I put in a large orchid top pot because I had read that they like a distinct wet-dry cycle, and that's why they do well on mounts. Well, mine sat in that orchid top pot for a long time, until recently, and she did nothing. So a couple of weeks ago, I was watering, and as I was watering my orchids, I realized I have 3 other Phalaenopsis that are also from the Philippines, around the same area that my Schilleriana here is from. And I had a light bulb moment. So the other 3 I've had since August or September of 2021, so I've had them long enough to determine whether they're doing well or not. And one is my Phalaenopsis here, who did bloom for me, surprisingly, and is working on a new leaf right there. The other is my Hieroglyphica here, working on a new leaf, as well as roots. And then my Sanderiana here with her big fat juicy leaves. I love these leaves. I realized that all of them are in a bark and moss mixture and have really taken to this. So the light bulb moment was, well, Trish, you have these 3 in the same mixture, the bark and the moss, and they are just exploding with growth. Why don't you put the Schilleriana in there? So that's exactly what I did. So towards the end of March, I believe it was around the 28th, 29th of March, I put her into a bark and moss mixture. And about a week later, I started seeing some root tips, and those root tips are just continuing to extend. Those were not in there when I initially potted her up. Additionally, this leaf was just droopy, and I could literally just fold her. As well as this leaf has always been very droopy on me. Every once in a while it'll get some life to it and then it'll droop. Get some life and it'll droop. Well, since putting her in here, this one has completely opened back up. It's nice and flat, not curled, and is very stiff. I mean, I can barely move it. So that is a great thing. They do want that distinct wet-dry cycle. So if you're going to pot your Schilleriana, make sure that after you water it, it will dry out within 3 to 5 days, at which point you'll want to water her again. But make sure that she's completely dry before you water her. That's what I've been doing with her. Or for the first week, all I did was just water her with just plain water. The pH of that water was anywhere from 5.9 to about 6.3, give or take. Somewhere in there. I wasn't real specific with it. And what I was doing is just setting her in the water, letting the moss absorb the water up, leaving her in for about 10 minutes. And then I set her on a drying towel for 30 minutes to make sure all the excess water had drained out. before putting her back into my decorative pot that I have her in. And as with most of my orchids, what I do is I do put pebbles at the bottom so that the excess water can drain and they're not sitting in the water. However, with her, I do tend to make sure that water is in here at all times to create the additional humidity that these guys prefer. So it is said, as Roger from Roger's Orchid says, these guys prefer 80% and higher humidity. I cannot provide 80% humidity or higher in my living room. It just wouldn't look pretty, okay? I like green foliage. I don't like green walls. So I'm hoping that by leaving water in there and creating that additional humidity, it kind of gives her what she needs. Now, as far as light is concerned, they do prefer bright indirect light, a little bit more light than your hybrid Phalaenopsis. They do not want direct sunlight, as none of our Phalaenopsis want direct sunlight. So right now she sits at the bottom of my grow shelf, and the Barina light is about right here. So she's at the edge and the Barina light is here. As she continues to strengthen and grow roots throughout the growing season, I plan on setting her back further and further and further until she gets the strongest light that I can provide for her, because during the growing season they do like a lot of bright light. Additionally, earlier this week I did add in some of my slow release Osmocote fertilizer just around the outside a little bit, not too close to the roots but close enough that they can absorb it, to help start fertilizing her. During the growing season, you do want to fertilize, and if you use a water-soluble fertilizer, it's recommended to use a quarter strength, okay? Kind of play around with it depending on how you fertilize. I fertilize at every watering, whether it be with my MSU fertilizer or if I'm doing a CalMag supplement. They get something at every watering, and then at least once a month, they get a good flush. I also do a Epsom salt soak once a month, and this coming up week will be time for that. And this will be her first Epsom salt soak since being in this new setup. So I'm wondering if that will help kind of boost some growth in her. I've not given her any CalMag either, so she will be getting CalMag the week after, and hoping that will help induce some growth. I thought I saw a leaf trying to grow, guys. I got shiny object syndrome there. Sorry about that. What else? So we talked about the watering, the light, media. Really, you have to go with your environment. If you have a humid environment, or if you're growing in a greenhouse, the bark would probably work because you have that extra humidity in the air. I believe the reason that the moss and bark mixture for my girls are working simply because, again, in my living room it's a little bit drier. I think the average humidity is around 35–40%. I have a ceiling fan that is on all year long that has consistent airflow, so all of them do get a lot of good airflow. Now, there are two different types of Schilleriana that you can find. You have the silverleaf Schilleriana, and then you have the one that I have, which is found in the Luzon, I hope I'm saying that right, area of the Philippines. So the silverleaf are generally found in the Sabah, S-A-B-A-H, region of Malaysia, which is in the Philippine area. And their leaves are very distinct silver. All the pictures that I've seen are very distinct, like you can really see the silvery shimmer to them. The bulk of the Schillerianas you're going to find, though, are like these, where they're in the Luzon. They have the darker leaves, and the modeling is more what they call banded. Mine is not showing banding very well, but I can show you on the Phalaenopsis here, where if you, let's see if I can do it without the glare, but do you see how the modeling kind of has more of a stripe effect as opposed to a more even spread? I don't know the word, but it kind of gives the illusion of banding or striping. That is kind of what these guys will do. And the roots are very much like the Phalaenopsis here, where they're very flat. They don't, let's see, this one's better. See how flat that is? It doesn't have that roundness that we're used to seeing on the roots of an orchid. It's a very flat one, and this is why many people will grow the Phalaenopsis as well as the Schilleriana on a mount, because of that flatness. They really grab a good hold to it. And if I had the propensity to water her every day, I would put her back on a mount. However, I do have a full-time job, and I do have grown kids, but you know, even grown, they do take up some of your time, as well as all of the other orchids. I don't have time to devote watering her thoroughly every day. So that is why I chose to put her in a pot, and the orchid top with the large bark was not working. I was not watering her enough. But since putting her in here where the moisture kind of retains a little bit longer, has worked so far. Knock on wood. And other than that, guys, I appreciate you coming by. Go check everyone else out. If you have any suggestions or feedback on my lady here, let me know, and I will see you on the next one.